Do you want? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Community Energy England, Community Energy South and Community Energy London webinar on councils and community energy. Delivering impactful climate action. I'm Duncan Law from Community Energy England, and I want to thank you and all our panel for coming. We're going to begin with a quick poll while I do some essential housekeeping before I hand over to Councillor Slade to welcome you formally. So, housekeeping, please mute unless you're invited to speak by the chair. If you have questions through the presentations, please do stick them in the chat. Please be brief. If they're for a particular person, say whom, and they will be collated for the very brief question and answer to the panel at the end, and we will try and provide answers for questions we don't get to in the follow-up. So the agenda for the day quickly is an introduction and welcome from Councillor Vicky Slade, quick context setting from me, a keynote address from our chair, Louise Marix, followed by 5 speakers from councils talking about their collaborations with community energy. And then a look at support being provided to councils nationwide by Community Energy South, followed by quick question and answer, and close, we aim, at 10:30. The webinar will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel for the benefit of your colleagues who couldn't make it today. And now I'd like you to do the poll, which has just appeared, and I'd like to hand over to Councillor Vicky Slade, who is the ex-leader of Bournemouth Council and director of the LGA Environment, Economy, Housing and Transport Board, to welcome you formally and to say a few words. Vicky.
First fail. Thank you, Duncan, for inviting me to introduce this session, which I think is really important. Now the vast majority of councils have declared a climate emergency, and with the work I'm doing in my day job with Creators 2050, I've discovered that most councils have either already invested in some sort of renewable energy scheme, either on their own buildings or local land, or they're actively planning to do so in their climate plan. So giving a huge opportunity for community energy to play its part. The other things that are driving this, as far as I can tell, is with the feed-in tariffs having ended, councils are looking at ways to not only generate power and to achieve their climate goals, but to support their communities in eradicating fuel poverty and looking to create some direct community benefit. Through talking to one of my contacts within a large council, he was telling me that through the general increase in the price of energy and more recently the conflicts in Ukraine, his council, therefore I'm sure many other councils, are reporting that the price of their commercial energy has increased 5-fold. That is going to lead to councils having to make really difficult decisions about how they use power and heat, and those things will obviously all have a direct impact on services. So this really is a very current issue. I'm also hearing that buying power from solar farms is fast becoming out of the reach of councils. So the answer really is to build our own and to reduce the reliance on commercial organisations who, by their constitutions, need to factor profit into the frame. Some councils, like my own at Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, have set up green investment funds with the clear aim to support such projects. Other councils like West Berkshire, Warrington and Leeds have got green municipal bonds to directly fund energy generation schemes. So it's quite clear that there is an appetite from councils and communities. And I think what's really new is that appetite to democratise energy ownership in a very different way than the privatisation of the late 20th century, to truly putting ownership and benefit into the hands of communities and individuals. And I think that's a very new sight that we didn't really see in the 20th century, and I think will become a real emblem of 21st century local government. The other small thing to say is that many councils have now signed up to the UN Sustainability Development Goals. Those will also be driving decision making, and the requirement to comply with the Social Value Act. So wider social, economic and environmental benefits should now be the norm. And therefore community energy is that brilliant opportunity to lead the way through people-led transition to net zero. And finally, I just want to touch on last year's APSI survey. In that survey, councils were found to be 3 times more trusted than government and 4 times more trusted than private companies to deliver on public services. So it really feels like there's a role for local councils to support communities to deliver those services. It also found that when polled against other services, action on climate change came out second in the list of priorities, with more than half of people wanting councils to spend more of their council tax on local measures. So with public support for councils to engage more proactively in this space, the cost of living crisis biting for councils and impacting on the energy costs for councils as well, it seems timely to take the opportunity to look at the role of community energy to achieve, in the words of Community Energy England's own State of the Sector report, people-powered net zero. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Louise.
Thanks, Vicky. We're actually going on to Duncan, who's going to outline community energy, and then I'll speak and introduce the first speaker. So I'll hand back to Duncan.
Thank you, Louise, and I will share a screen. I beg your pardon. This should be already in presentation mode, but it's not. I beg your pardon. Here we go. Finally, I beg your pardon. Right, so very quickly, what is community energy? Well, it's basically people getting together in their communities to do energy projects to tackle climate change and leverage benefit for the community. And traditionally, that has been renewable energy, often on rooftops, but as you can see at large scale too. That is Westmill Solar and Wind in Oxfordshire, but also energy efficiency and energy advice, as you can see top right in southeast London, and education and training. Those are paid interns installing rooftop solar for Brixton Energy on top of social housing. So a huge variety and growing variety of activities. Where is it? Well, it's pretty well everywhere, with a few sort of holes in the map, as you can see. If you want to check out where your local, whether there's any community energy local to you, use the bit.ly link at the bottom of the screen, CE-member map with the capitalization, and you can also select there for the types of projects you want to see. So where are we? This is a sort of graphic from our State of the Sector report in 2020, which was the most challenging year ever for us. The sector doubled every year between 2014 and 2017, but gradually the government pulled the rug from underneath us. But still, in our most challenging year, we had 424 organisations UK-wide, raised 30 million in investment, returned 6 million back to communities, including 2.9 million pounds worth of energy bill savings, created 84 new jobs, 132 organisations and growing, working on energy efficiency and advice, and 358,000 people engaged on energy and climate change. The sector has got energy coming towards it post COP26, and really is set to scale again if it can get the partnerships and the support that it needs to be able to do projects and leverage huge amounts of private investment too. So the government promised the Environmental Audit Committee, who did an excellent set of recommendations last year, that they would include our future plans for community energy in the net zero strategy. And along came the net zero strategy, which mentioned community energy and the importance of local climate action, but really there was no plan and no practical support measures to harness the potential of community energy as the Environmental Audit Committee had recommended. Additionally, the £10 million rural community energy fund, which has mobilised hundreds of millions of investment to do community, made great play of empowering local leaders. But when you read the text, they were nearly all local elected leaders, council leaders, which is really important. But there are, as you and we know, there are other local leaders and entrepreneurs who need to be part of the picture. And nearly all the government funding is funneled through 3.9 billion on retrofit, still more to come from the government's pledge, 450 million grants for heat pump installations, and so on. And then more recently, the Levelling Up white paper was announced, which again mentioned empowering local leaders. But again, the emphasis was overwhelmingly on councils. And we have been, as Community Energy, recommended to work with local authorities to access the national growth funds, for instance, the Levelling Up Fund, which is up to 4.8 billion. The Shared Prosperity Fund, a revenue fund of 2.6 billion through to 2025. Significant sums of money, but none of it to actually leverage new money to come in. Now, so community energy is sort of out in the cold, and finally local government is getting the recognition it deserves. What we're urging is that local government proactively engages with community energy, because community energy will be coming after you, I've no doubt, to do the partnerships that can make local climate action happen, and be part of consortium bids and climate emergency plans, the public sector decarbonisation scheme. We can help you access innovation funding, and we're key partners in local area energy planning, which is moving up the government's agenda. Finally, community energy is not really just a nice to have, it's essential, because it's not possible to get close to meeting net zero without engaging with the people. And as Vicky said, local authorities are trusted, but community energy is even more trusted. And being involved in projects gives them a sense of ownership. So community energy can harness the local passion, expertise, and free money, and be a trusted local, so it can be a delivery partner. It's a trusted local intermediary and advocate, involving people, which is how you get the deep and lasting agency for real change. It's 4 to 5 times better at engaging the public than commercial partners. And I've already mentioned the social change. It brings huge community and social benefits. Fuel poverty returning £10 for every pound invested in the project. A recent report showing community wind in Scotland 34 times better than commercial partners. And also it's innovative. It's seeking all the time for combinations of opportunities to realize and new business models. And here are some of the opportunities that working with community energy can bring. Delivery of renewable energy on your assets and your land, energy efficiency and fuel poverty advice, which community energy is brilliant at, EV charging and car clubs, which somebody recently described as a gateway drug to community involvement, especially in rural areas, local area energy planning, climate emergency planning, change advocacy, community outreach, education, skills training, capacity building, heat and retrofit, which is really tough stuff. So that's it really. Please do be in contact with us if you need further information. And at the bottom is the bit.ly link to see whether there's community energy in your community. And now I'd like to hand back to introduce our amazing, to give our keynote speaker and speech, and to introduce our council colleagues. Thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. That's very kind. I'm Louise Marix Evans from Quantum Strategy and Technology. We're a Northwest sustainability consultancy, and I'll be introducing the speakers and taking your questions today. And I've also been working with local community energy for over a decade, grey hair. I've been director of 2 community energy organisations, and I'm currently working with Carbon Co-op and People Powered Retrofit on replicating some of their projects beyond Greater Manchester. And then at the other end of the scale, in 2020, and also now again, I've been working with the Climate Change Committee, the advisors to the government on climate change, and wrote their local authorities and 6th carbon budget report. And through that, spent a lot of time engaging with local authorities and working out who needs to do what at what level to get to net zero. So that concluded national government can't achieve net zero without working with local government. I think we've won that argument, as Duncan agreed. I mean, obviously, a lot more needs to happen next. But at the local level, local government can't achieve its climate emergency ambitions on its own, as you'll know. So your direct emissions will only be between 2 and 5% of your local emissions, but you have influence over at least 30. I could have calculated it as more, actually, especially on transport and building emissions. And that's through that range of policy, your role as a partnership instigator, through innovation, communication, and more. So you're probably engaging with high carbon business, looking at how they transition. You might be supporting the low carbon goods and services sector in your area and your sort of land-based businesses. You're probably supporting SMEs in reducing their waste, making that move towards EVs. You will no doubt be focusing on fuel poverty and ensuring a just transition, and that we use that net zero opportunity to build back better, drive up health and well-being, generate more local jobs, and raise everyone's living standards. And you'll probably be grappling with how to do that retrofit work across the domestic energy sector, across all those different tenures. Your partners in that net zero journey are also your distribution network operators who manage the local energy grids, electricity grids, and they work with community energy. So we see Electricity Northwest has a Powering Our Communities fund, and Northern Power Grids has got a community energy seed fund, and those funds help community energy groups set up, but they also work at the other end, helping people develop innovative schemes. Excuse me. And that's because they want to see more renewables on the grid, but more schemes to help manage demand on the grid or flex that demand. So the question is, and you've answered it in the survey, 75% of you are engaged with community energy groups. Are you making the most of those community energy opportunities in your local authority? Because that sector is a key tool. And it's not just about generating more renewables, though, as Duncan said, it is about that. We see PV still going on schools, leisure centres, ports, community buildings, and on businesses. But we see this innovation, so they're helping tackle transport emissions, like getting EV charge points into rural areas by working with councils, Durham and Carlisle, working with Charge My Street, which has done a successful share offer. Reducing domestic emissions. So we've got that kind of innovation around developing a really high quality assessment for homes and a high quality customer service, end-to-end service for retrofit, which People Powered Retrofit have pioneered, and which is being rolled out now in Devon with Devon County Council, who are working with community energy organisations to deliver that. We've got really, really good innovators in people like Low Carbon Hub, who've been in place in Oxford for a long time, looking at smart energy innovation. And then you've got this sort of opportunity to work at a very villagey or very community scale to do the heat transition, like we see in Swaffham Prior in Cambridgeshire, getting a whole village off oil onto district heat. And that's working with community energy, with Hindu and HNIP funding. So this morning, you're going to hear about how community energy schemes develop projects, engage communities and raise finance, how they create local jobs and kickstart local markets. And that aligns with community wealth building, which we increasingly see as an approach in councils that diversifies the economy, keeps that money local, and ensures community empowerment and pride and ownership. And I think community energy groups can be an acorn that grows into a bigger oak. So it can give rise to car clubs, collective buying schemes, whole area decarbonisation schemes, and other sort of waste reduction aspects like repair cafes or libraries of things, stuff that goes wider than energy, but speaks to environmental action. And as Duncan said, it's a very trusted voice in the community. So supporting these organisations and engaging them using their skills, and bear in mind they are businesses as well, can be a key way for you to engage. And like any engagement, it's not sort of simple. It can be complicated. It doesn't always work. So there are ups and downs in this, just as there are with any commercial or community partner. So I think we should go into that with our eyes open. So we're now going to start hearing from local authorities who are going to tell us why they work with community energy, what they're doing, how they overcame those inevitable challenges, and share their tips for success. And I'm going to start with Tom Day, who's the head of energy and low carbon at Essex County Council. So Tom, can I invite you to give your little talk? Just so you all know, you've probably got the agenda. We've got 6 speakers, and then we'll come on to question and answer. And I'd encourage you to put your questions and answers. Are we doing that in chat or Q&A? I can only see a chat. So pop them in the chat, please. So over to Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I think, let me just see if I can share my screen. Right, trying to select a screen. Oh, here we go, share, right. Too much time spent on Teams, not enough time spent on Zoom. Right, can people see that? I assume people can, so I can't see anybody else now. All I can see is my screen. So good morning.
We can see it, Tom, thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. My name's Tom Day. I'm head of the Energy and Low Carbon team at Essex County Council. I'm responsible for a range of programmes from renewables and innovation, which is looking at how we are encouraging investment in low carbon infrastructure in Essex. So at the utility scale end and in innovation aspects of energy, such as hydrogen and biofuels, through to the retrofit agenda. So I'm responsible for how we are going to retrofit 630,000 homes in Essex and commercial properties as well. And then at the other end of the spectrum, I'm also responsible for our community energy programme. So I just wanted to say a little bit about the journey we've been on and just some reflections really on some of the challenges we've faced and where we got to. So Essex County Council has set up a Climate Action Commission, which is an independent body of about 32 commissioners from academia, the private and the public sector. We haven't declared a climate emergency, but instead the job of the Climate Commission was to set a really of targets to help get Essex to net zero by 2050 and then map out the role that the County Council can play. And one of the really helpful things that came in the Commission's report that came out just back in last year was this commitment to community energy. The ambition was that by 2035, we'd have a network of community energy neighbourhoods built across every district in Essex to generate, store, share, and use energy locally. And that's been incredibly helpful because prior to that, we didn't really have a strategic commitment as an organisation to community energy, and now we do. So that's been really fundamental in helping me and my team get this agenda at the forefront of people's minds. So what have we been doing? Well, I suppose we've been working in community energy in one shape or form since before my time at Essex, actually, but all the way back to 2014. So for some years, we've run a successful collective energy switching campaign. That's been going for 8 years now. And then one of the first things I did when I came into post was to try to get a collective solar panel purchasing scheme together off the back of the successful Essex Energy Switch. So Solar Together Essex was born in 2018. We're now in the third campaign of that, and at the end of that campaign we would have helped to get solar installations on nearly 1,000 roofs across Essex. So that's been fantastic to kind of get a community level action on energy on the agenda. But it was really apparent to me that there's been a vacuum in Essex at that time in terms of community energy groups. And so with the usual challenges that we face of lack of resources, we've been very successful in going out and pursuing grant funding. And one of our big successes back in 2019 was the Empower project, which is an ERDF funded project, which gave us some funding to set up what we then call the Pathways Programme. And this is a programme that we commissioned from Community Energy South, and we were successful in the procurement process, to start to provide some really grassroots level support to the community with an ambition, with a target to try and support 10 groups to go through initial advice and support to explore becoming a community energy group, and then for 5 of those groups to progress to become fully fledged social enterprises, community energy groups with business plans. And I'm really delighted to say that today, actually 4 groups have now formed. So as of 2021 last year, we have now got Saffron Walden Community Energy, Tollsbury Climate Partnership, Community Energy Culture and Sustainable Danbury. And what's been fantastic is that where we had no groups previously, we've now got 4, and they're really starting to create a nucleus of community energy activity. And then off the back of that, we were successful again in another European funded project called Lexi. And that has really helped us get the funding in place to extend that support, but also take it a bit further. So the aim now with Pathways 2 is to do 3 things. One is to continue to provide that seed corn support that we provided in the first phase of Pathways, which is often so important, with very relatively small sums of money to help some of these groups, some of these local communities, to take what starts off just as a conversation around a table into an idea, really, an acorn. I think somebody used the phrase earlier, you know, an acorn that can grow into a bigger tree, of creating a community energy group. And through the Pathways programme, we've been able to provide those often small sums of money that can just help to get those groups constituted. So
30 seconds to go, please, Tom.
Sorry. But with that, also provide much more kind of onward support so that those groups that are established can start to develop their business plans further. And with that, we also want to create what we call a Community Energy Essex group, so that those groups can start to come together and have the potential to take on larger projects. So really quickly, a few thoughts and reflections and lessons that we've learned from that. I think get the ball rolling and call it community energy. So the work that we were doing with Solar Together and Energy Switch, we were just calling it community energy and starting to bring that into the conversation in the council because people are not familiar with that. The early work that we did in Danbury through the European funded project enabled us to install a solar panel system on the school. And we really used that as a beacon in the local community. It was amazing. It was like dropping a stone in a pond. And that lots of conversations. That installation then created a whole load of energy and pardon the pun, and discussion and excitement around Danbury, which then led to a community.
Sorry, Tom, we're going to have to ask you to wrap up and conclude, I'm afraid, because we've got a very tight schedule.
Okay.
We will be sharing slides, so people will be able to read the slides.
Okay.
Thank you
so
much.
I'll just close by saying I think that there are challenges in this and getting this agenda onto the table in large organisations like Essex County Council, and helping people understand what community energy actually is. So sometimes we've had to be quite tactical in that, just to get the ball rolling, but also now we're thinking carefully about what our strategy is for 3 years ahead. So I would encourage people to be patient with it. There's a lot of nurturing that's involved, but also point to those early successes because they're critical in giving people confidence about the benefits that community energy can bring. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tom. And sorry we're so tight on time. I think, yeah, really useful reflections there, and we'll pull together what we heard towards the end. So next, I would like to introduce Anka Georgiou, who's from Kensington and Chelsea, to give us a little 5-minute talk about what they've been up to.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Brilliant.
we can hear you.
So thank you very much for inviting me. I'm a Senior Climate Change Manager for Kensington and Chelsea, and I will be telling you a bit what we have been doing. I don't know how many of you have heard, but we have been working with repowering since 2015, and we've set up our first energy co-op called North Kensington Community Energy in 2018. Since then, this has been growing quite a lot. It got 2 national awards, and so far, our impacts to date, we've managed to install solar panels on a community center, to schools and the leisure center. We've been raising share offers of almost 200K, and we've also been working with repowering to deliver training, and the community fund that we've raised so far is around 70K. Now, the council's role, because I will be concentrating on the council's role, I think the key thing is to have community energy as a key strategic commitment and objective in climate change action plans. And as you see here, regarding our journey so far, we have been including community energy in most of the climate emergency action plan that we have so far, including in the climate emergency declaration and the new action plan. Myself and we are a small team, but I'm a dedicated officer acting as a champion internally to deliver the community energy project together with my team. I think partnership is working. A partnership working is key, and also borough-wide and regional collaboration, political and senior leadership commitment and support. We have been raising a lot internally the awareness around what community energy is, why the council should be involved, and why we should be supporting. Another key thing for councils and in general for Kensington and Chelsea was to provide access to site and to support repowering and the NKC, the energy co-op, to actually identify suitable sites. As I mentioned, we have been installing on schools, which are council-owned, community center, which are council-owned. So this has been key in a way. Signing and supporting to develop the legal agreements. We know it takes a long process, and again, working with repowering and working with the energy group around developing the lease agreements and the PPAs. I think the council has knowledge on the buildings which are suitable for solar, offering the roof spaces as well. Another key thing for us was opening doors to outreach and engagement. We have been supporting repowering and NKC to actually do a lot of community engagement, from small things to flyering to actually building a community energy engagement plan. Promoting it through various social media, and then another key thing was applying for funding. So always trying to widen our partnership. Now, what worked well, as I mentioned, what worked well was that we included the community energy as a key objective in the previous climate emergency action plan, which came to an end this year, and also in the new draft climate emergency action plan, which is actually going for approval tomorrow. So community energy and NKC and continuing to work with NKC and repowering is a key objective and action plan, action in the action plan. This aligns with the new climate emergency vision and the council's response to climate emergency to empower residents to take action and to enable a just transition and to put people at the heart of the energy system. It's a great way to co-production and co-design projects with residents. We have a strong community and council support, so it's a popular scheme. I think for us, what worked well is having the expertise from repowering to manage the scheme and to provide support with engagement, but also with managing the community energy model. We've received an increased number of volunteers, and we have an active group at the moment that meets every 2 weeks. And NKC as became a voice in the local community, not only on community energy, but on environment. I won't go too much into the detail because you know the benefits of community energy, but I wanted to talk a bit about the wider benefits. So I think what worked well for us is that we didn't only stop at installing solar panels, we also looked at managing other projects through the community energy, like tackling youth poverty, organizing greener living day events to promote sustainable living, green skills and paid training. So we offered young training for young people. More than 16 people have been trained. We've worked with Repowering in delivering education and climate change workshops in schools and climate change drama program, and we've organized solar panel making workshops. And then we have phase 3 and phase 4 underway. And one of the, again, what worked really well is that we managed to hire a local champion that actually works on NKC, and she's a local resident. Now, what are the challenges and lessons learned? I know we're running out of time. I think one of the key, and specifically for specifically for Kensington and Chelsea, was identifying sites. So I think what we're working at the moment is having a portfolio of potential sites, aligning the refurbishment with solar installation, because as part of the climate emergency, we want to start concentrating on a fabric first approach and deep retrofitting. So not only looking at solar panels and then doing the deep retrofits, so trying to align this. Permissions and approvals, again, has been quite challenging. The changes in feed-in tariff and having to adopt the community energy model. Building an inclusive model, and I think a movement, and I think here is moving away only from the usual suspects and maybe engaging the harder to reach communities and making sure they do participate. And one of the key things is how do we adapt the community energy model with the new legislation changes, but actually ensure that residents remain at the heart. And one of the things that we've learned as well is that we extend the partnership. So we're looking at decarbonization plans and energy audits as part of the community energy, and trialing peer-to-peer selling of electricity. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done, Anka. That's fantastic. It's a bit like being on Just a Minute, just 5 minutes. So without wasting time, I'm going to pass on to George Munson from the Sustainable Energy and Air Quality Team and Resources and Housing at Leeds City Council. So George, you've got your 5 minutes to go for community energy without repetition, deviation, or whatever else they say.
Anka, could you?
As I say, I can't share my screen. Host disabled attendee screen sharing. Okay,
try again now, you should be able to.
Thank you. Window, that one, share. Okay, hopefully everyone will be able to see this shortly. It pops up on mine, so it should be all good. So yeah, George Munson from Leeds City Council. My main role in the council is a senior project manager. So I lead a team of people working on domestic energy efficiency and delivering district heating, which doesn't have a direct link to community energy, but I'll hopefully come on to that shortly. What I'm focusing on today is a partnership with Otley Energy, really as an example of how community energy and Otley Energy in particular have managed to scale up their influence across the city and the region. We've been working together with them for around about 3 years, and it's just a really good example of community energy maturing over time. So in Leeds, community energy probably splits down quite neatly around either side of our climate emergency declaration in 2019. Before we made this climate emergency, we probably saw community energy as quite as quite a niche that it's more about Leeds City Council as commissioners. So within community energy, we focused largely on fuel poverty by commissioning the likes of Groundwork and Care and Repair to work with us. Did quite a few small kind of ad hoc school renewables projects. We commissioned some large scale renewables on our own estates, solar PV on our own buildings, and then a 1.3 megawatts solar canopy over one of our new park and ride sites. But we didn't have a huge amount of involvement with community groups. Post the climate emergency, we've been focused much more on working as a city in partnership. University of Leeds established the Leeds Climate Commission, which is a broad partnership of private sector, third sector and public sector organisations. And it's really been a bit of a game changer, and the city is working collaboratively to seek to cut carbon as quickly as possible using the most innovative methods we can find. But just moving on to Otley in a bit more detail, I think it's fair to say it established itself as a fairly traditional kind of community energy project. In 2017, the council worked on a feasibility study with Otley Town Council, identified good opportunities for solar on the library and schools. Subsequently, Otley Energy established as a community energy company. They then led all this work. They secured the feed-in tariffs and around about £240,000 of investment in community energy bonds for the library that you can see on the screen now, a high school and primary. It's about 330 kilowatts of solar PV went on, with all the benefits you normally expect from community energy in terms of profit sharing, educational programs, all the really good things about kind of having visible renewables in the community. And now that utility prices are going through the roof, they're looking at 4 other schools to kind of grow that specific renewable project. But they didn't stop there. They've really been focusing on, I suppose, growing up and expanding their influence. So Otley Energy established a partnership with Leeds City Council, ENGIE and University of Leeds, who got some funding for Innovate UK, basically on the recognition that single renewable energy projects are nice, but they're not going to solve the climate emergency on their own. So what they're looking at now is more about the need for community-wide buy-in for deep cuts and really focusing on how a smart local energy system would work. So they've undertaken this feasibility study, really focusing on building a business model for smart local energy systems. And again, the key part of that is a focus on partnership between councils, community and the energy sector, all of whom have a part to play in this web of community energy, smart local energy systems. It's got a very broad plan, focused really around the need to retrofit to cut demand, installing renewables, and then using a mixture of storage and tariffs to then share the benefits locally. It hasn't moved on to delivery yet. It needs around about £6 million of match funding, but Otley Energy are now talking to the West Yorkshire Combined Authority about how to jointly make that happen. And then my final slide is just really focusing on scaling up to the next level, where Leeds City Council has been part of the Better Homes Yorkshire retrofit programme with the other 10 authorities in the region. It's an 8-year programme focused on domestic retrofit, working closely with ENGIE. It's coming to an end in about a year's time, but we don't want it to end there. It's got a strong role to play. It helps to deliver some deep carbon cuts within the domestic energy sector. So we've been working with the UK GBC's Accelerator Cities programme, looking at the best ways to roll out a kind of regional retrofit model.
1 minute.
Otley Energy has been part of that work, and they've now volunteered and had a little bit of grant funding to lead the whole process. So they're now leading a project to try and establish a successor to Better Homes Yorkshire across the whole of the region, based on a regional one-stop model. So it's a project that's designed to work on an area basis, recognising that communities by their very nature are often diverse, with the problem you see on screen now that one small row of houses would have all the different tenures included within it. And they're looking to secure some commitment from local authorities to deliver this programme, and then secure commitment from the energy market to then support delivery. It's something we're looking to be commissioning over the next year or so, a company to work with us to deliver the Better Homes hub across the whole of the region. So in conclusion, I think community energy operates at a whole variety of different scales. For some people, it means the very localized focus on renewable energy projects. But in our experience, that's a great springboard to do something much kind of broader and hopefully deeper, where some of the ethics and ethos of a community energy company can help to deliver a region-wide project, and really recognizing that community energy has got different complementary strengths and perspectives to local authorities. And by working in partnership, we can all benefit. I think Ollie Energy is a really good example of how community energy can be used to coordinate local partnerships for everyone's benefit. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, George. I think that builds on from that generation into much more complicated projects and building up that skills asset you've got in your local area. Okay, so next we are going over to Ben Atkinson from the North Lincolnshire Council. Ben, you've got your 5 minutes and we're getting later and later. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me let me share my screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see that.
Yep.
That's great,
Yeah.
Ben.
Excellent. Yeah, so welcome everybody. Yeah, Ben Atkinson, so Investment Delivery Officer. So the role is essentially a project manager in a range of different projects, highways, housing, energy related projects, retrofits. It's a very broad spectrum, so we're not specialised into energy as such. However, we were set on this task sort of 8 months ago around establishing a vehicle for change and including the community in reducing our carbon footprint in North Lincolnshire. So a little bit of context, I'll briefly skip through this slide and show you where we are. People get confused where North Lincolnshire is. So we are a unitary authority, sort of south of the Humber Bank, about 170,000 people located in our area between Grimsby, Doncaster and Lincoln. Bit of background to our area. We obviously, I think we've just lost we were the top spot on the worst air quality areas in the leaderboard in the UK due to our presence with steel manufacturing and heavy carbon intensive industries. We are actively trying to diversify and transform the sort of local economy and move towards the advanced manufacturing sectors around the clean growth, allowing and tying in with the Humber low carbon pipeline that's going through directly through the area, and a lot of the activity that's happening in the energy estuary. However, that's all well and good, and that's at a large scale, but it isn't on the local level, and it isn't buying in the community on a resident level. It's more the inward investors from both international and national investors, all looking to locate on the sort of Freeport area on the south of the Humber Bank. So that's a bit of background in terms of where we are located. So our context, so we're a bit of behind the curve as in comparison to some of the other councils that have sort of shared their case studies. We have set on a green future, which is our vision to sort of bring everybody together within in the county to take positive action on the environment and make it better for future generations. So it's a wide, broad remit within that plan, and there's various different themes, but it gives us that high level strategy as to what we want to achieve. We're trying to boost productivity and economic growth while reduce our carbon emissions. I think that's one of the challenges that we're facing at the minute, is how can you continue to grow your economy, attract inward investors, whilst making sure that's done in a sustainable manner, whilst contributing to our goals of being net zero by 2030. So we have a matrix style approach in the council in delivering this green future, with themes, with leads on various different themes spread across construction, highways, housing, etc. But together we work collectively to pick up these projects and move them along. We are quite low on resource. I'm sure other councils feel the same strain. We do lack we've lacked capital in investing in a lot of the buildings. The condition of some of our buildings are aging. We have quite a large estate, ranging from leisure centres, village halls, community centres, offices, etc. Obviously, the cost of the retrofit was a challenge, with the cost not really coming down, especially for sort of heating systems and so on and so forth. And the last challenge that has reared its head significantly in the last sort of few months is fuel poverty in our area, sort of the demographics of sort of Scunthorpe and North Lincolnshire. So we are actively aware of fuel poverty within the area and seeing what we can do to do it. So our need was really to support public sector organisations to reduce carbon footprints.
1 minute to go, please.
Okay, that's flown by. I'll skip this slide. So our plan really, so over the next few months, we're going to be setting up North Lincolnshire Community Energy, which will be a large project. So it's £3 million capital project, looking to install 3 megawatts of rooftop solar to schools and community buildings. We will be actively looking to do a lot of the other initiatives that the other council colleagues and people on the call have suggested today as well. And this is really a start for our area to drive forward this. We are trying to accelerate it at a pace over the next 2 years to make sure these large secondary schools with large sports halls, with huge sort of extensive roof space that's available for rooftop solar. We are using the Towns Fund grant, but we've been successful in with receiving that 1.4 million, which we'll be allocating towards this project. And we're hoping to save 491 tons of CO2 per annum. So it's a large project that we'll be pushing forward over the next 2 years, and we're going to be delivering this with the support of Energy for All. I think it's key in there because our resource has been one of the challenges, but we've managed to use the skills and the expertise within this call today and some of the organisations that are out there that have really allowed us to drive this forward.
Could you draw to a conclusion? Sorry, Ben.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sure.
Thank you.
No problem. And yeah, without going any further, that is sort of where we're at, North Lincolnshire Community Energy. So I'll welcome any questions and I'll pass back to the panel.
Thanks, Ben. So what we've got there is using that community energy group to augment your scarce resources. Right, we'll go on now to Liz Ainsley from Islington. And then after that, we'll hear from Esme, who's from Community Energy South, to sort of give the community energy viewpoint. But first we'll have Liz. So this should leave us 10 minutes of questions. If I can keep you both to 5 minutes, please. Over to you, Liz.
Thanks very much. Good morning. Hi, I'm Liz Ainsley and I'm with Islington Council, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen, but this always goes horribly wrong. So bear with me just 1 second.
I always think this is the bit where we need a little bit of music.
Exactly. I would sing, but that's a very bad idea. Right, hopefully that is now up and running.
Yeah, you're there if you want to stick it onto display. Yep, there you are. You're there, Liz.
Fantastic. Oh, I'll go back. So that's my introduction slide. Hello. So I am the Community Energy Development Officer for Islington Council. And so I've been very fortunate over the last few years to be able to help community energy projects off the ground and work with community energy groups. Islington Council has had a community energy fund since 2016, and we've been fortunate enough to use carbon offset funding to give out about £600,000 worth of grant funding over 5 rounds. We've got another round coming up this spring, so we have another couple £100,000 that we can give away, and that is to help with feasibility studies, capital projects, and support for community energy groups. There's a lot of other things that we do as well to try to help with community energy in the borough. So we have our Energising Small Businesses Fund, which is a small grant funding for local businesses to replace their lights with LEDs or to replace a boiler with heat pumps, that sort of thing. We have a Sustainable Energy Partnership, which is a network of businesses, and they can reduce their environmental impact by meeting together. Someone has developed a carbon footprint calculator, which is really useful. It's on our website. So that's really handy for businesses. We have our Shine fuel poverty referral network. So they give out energy advice across London to people who might be in fuel poverty or in debt and need some help with switching their energy company. We have energy doctors as part of that team who go out and put small measures into people's homes. And we have everything brought together in our Together Greener website, which is a new sort of one-stop microsite to help residents and businesses to look at their carbon footprint, take actions to reduce it in line with all of our net zero goals. So that's quite a useful tool. But specifically with community energy, I was talking to a couple of people before today saying it's really great that we have carbon offset money to give away, but not all councils have money to give away for grants. Tom said that community energy groups need a lot of nurturing and patience, and Anka said that a lot of her work is championship internally. And actually that's really useful. There's a lot of things that you can do. A very small portion of my job is actually giving away any kind of grant money. A huge amount of my job is networking, helping community energy groups both internally, giving advice and support either with internal sources or trying to network external sources to help groups. We give energy advice workshops to groups. We hold networking events for community energy groups, and we work with all kinds of groups across the board. So I think a lot of councils could dedicate some office time to helping community energy groups get off the ground, with advice and support, and not necessarily just with funding. But we do have bigger projects as well that we help and support with. So we have our Greener Together investment, which has just been launched, which is it's a community municipal investment that was set up by Islington Council. We raised £1 million from residents and businesses across the borough and actually across the UK to invest in local energy schemes, local projects, etc. So
1 minute, please, Liz.
Okay, thanks. So you don't necessarily have to find the money yourself. There's other ways that you can raise money to then invest in projects across the borough. And actually, I think that's probably about it.
That's great, Liz, and you've helpfully summarised what some of the other people said, so drawing together those nuggets of information. That's fantastic. So now we've heard from the local authority speakers, we'll go to Esme Dongi from Community Energy South to tell us what they do, and then we'll get on to some questions. And I've only actually got 1 or 2 questions, so your questions, please. Over to you, Esme.
Thank you, Louise, and great to hear about all your wonderful projects. And I'm going to share my screen and put that into presentation mode. Oh, doesn't seem to be going. Try again. There we go. So you should see my screen now. So I'm going to talk to you about the Pathways programme that Community Energy South is working on, and we will be getting in touch with all local authorities soon to give you some more support. So first of all, just to let you know a bit about us. So Community Energy South has been going since 2013. We're a regional hub that supports community energy groups to grow and working on a whole wide range of projects. For example, the ones we've already heard about today. And we are now supporting community energy groups directly in partnership with local authorities. So what are we doing at the moment? So we've teamed up with a range of local authorities to provide direct support for starting up community energy groups. So we're currently working with Surrey County Council, Hampshire County Council, Essex County Council with Tom's team that we've heard of earlier today, South Downs Industrial Park. And most excitingly as well, at the moment, we've just starting a project with Bays. And as I mentioned, we're going to be offering support for community energy groups throughout the whole of England to get going. So we work on a whole wide range of projects. So essentially our partnerships with local authorities are supporting you to look at your net zero strategies and how community energy groups can help you. As we've already heard today, there's a lack of resource, there's a lack of funding. These are all the kind of things that community energy groups can help you with. So our approach is to support the growth of the community energy sector, and our emphasis is on enabling local communities. It's not just about doing one project, it's about giving communities the skills to do many, many projects. And this is how community energy groups can help implement your net zero strategies. And essentially we act as a support mechanism to establish community energy groups. And we do this through mentoring, training, providing tools and resources. There was a question earlier on about toolkits, so we have produced those for several local authorities already. And what we're doing is establishing a network of mentors throughout the whole country, and they will be able to support your community energy groups through our Bays funded programme, and we will be able to offer that support to you in the coming months. So our Pathways programme. So we have a step-by-step approach that we work through.
Esme, your slide, sorry to interrupt. Esme, your slides aren't shunting on. Can you see if they, no.
That's very strange. They are on
There's
mine.
been a comment to ask them to go forward.
Huh.
We're still in sort of your computer mode rather than your display mode.
Oh, really? Well, I really don't know what's happening there.
We'll share the slides afterwards. Crack on though, because we can hear what you're
okay,
saying.
so it's
Don't
working
worry.
fine on my screen, so I don't know what to do about that.
Never mind. Just keep talking. You're doing brilliantly. Keep going.
So we'll share the slides. So at the moment, I've got a lovely slide that I've done that none of you can see, that is our Pathways Roadmap. And we're looking at a step-by-step process for supporting community energy groups. So at the start, we look at assessing what's already going on. So there is so much going on in our local communities on environmental, sustainability, energy projects. So when we go and help communities to start up community energy groups, we look to see what's already happening and what support we can provide existing groups and interested people to form community energy groups. Then we look at identifying support and funding, and most importantly, we want to get funds into these community energy groups so that they can do all of their fantastic projects. So we work on them with funding bids, providing tools, the toolkit that we spoke about. Providing training, we have masterclasses, so have a look on the Community Energy South website, and we have a whole range of masterclasses that we provide free of charge to support community energy groups. And then we go through 2 steps of business support. So first, we have our first steps business support, and that is identifying key priorities, supporting the groups to start up. And then we go through to our next step support. And this is going into a lot more detail to produce a business plan, making sure that these community energy groups are robust, sustainable businesses, helping them to become incorporated, identifying projects and securing more project funding. So this is the approach that we offer to all local authorities that we work with. I'm sorry you can't see my slides as we will share these. So can you still not see them? Nothing more's happened?
No, we're still looking at the same thing as me.
Sorry about that. Well, just carry on. So just talking about some of our outcomes. So our
last minute, please, Louise.
Sure, yeah. So business plans, project planning and feasibility studies, we're doing throughout all of the areas we're working with. We've secured funding and training to go into new areas for energy efficiency, fuel poverty outreach. We're working on a whole range of funding applications for our groups. We have new projects we started up, for example, helping communities to transition from oil to renewable heat. So there's one starting up in Littlebury. We have QGIS projects that's looking at solar PV potentials throughout whole wide areas. We're starting up community hubs, and then we've got a huge raft of projects that are coming through as well that unfortunately I don't have time to talk about. And just to conclude, our vision is to support every single local authority to have a community energy group up and running. So this is the resource, this is the skills, this is the on-the-ground people that we want to have in place to support local authorities to reach their net zero strategies. And we believe that the key to success for that is for existing community energy groups, existing experts to go into those groups, mentor them, support them, nurture them, and help them throughout their entire process. So apologies you couldn't see the slides, don't know what happened there. And do have a look on our website, communityenergysouth.org, and please do keep in touch.
Wonderful, thanks Esme. And that's a brilliant note to end on there, because you've outlined exactly what kind of resource you're able to share with local authorities and local areas, which sounds like really good progress. We've got 4 questions. Oh, there's a new one coming up here. So I'm going to take 2 and then I'm going to put 2 out. So the question on offsetting is, can you fund, use offsetting funds to help fund feasibility studies? Yeah, okay, so yeah, it's not necessarily going to save carbon, so it wouldn't give you a proper offset, and it probably wouldn't meet standards, but Islington seems to have managed it and built up pots. And I guess it depends if it's a sort of offset pot from a development, that there'll be a particular way you're allowed to spend it. But as the grid decarbonises, we get less and less carbon saving from installing more solar. So I say that's not going to be a sustainable sort of funding pot for that. And is the government looking at putting more resources into Rural Community Energy Fund and reinstating Urban Community Energy Fund? I haven't seen any signs of that happening. We've got John Taylor in here today, who works in one of the energy hubs, I think in the southeast. He might know, but as Duncan said, community energy wasn't featuring very high, and I think that you'll need to look at using other bits of funding to do this, and we've seen Essex manage that with ERDF funding, and it looks like Community Energy South is good at getting hold of money for this kind of thing. So I wanted to go on to resources. So I'm really interested to hear from George in particular, and Liz and Ben about, Thomas and George, and then maybe Ben, about how much resource you've had to put in to get cracking with community energy groups to deliver impact. I'll take Tom first, please.
Yeah, sure. So it's really hard. So I have, we had 0.6 FTE working on it originally. And it was really through the ERDF funded program where we could get grant funding. To be honest, that funded the Pathways project, that kind of kick-started all of it. And then that led on to us being able to bid into the council for revenue funding for additional FTEs. So we've gone from 0.6 to 1.6 FTEs working with community energy. But it's still really tough. It's not a sustainable approach. So we're still thinking carefully about funding beyond the next 12-24 months.
Thanks, Tom. George, do you want to say something about how much you had to put in to get the Otley Energy thing going, or was that quite light?
It was very light, yeah. We're very fortunate. There's an incredibly driven individual in Otley who has effectively coordinated a lot of the work. We've got some in-kind support in terms of supporting feasibility studies and the like, and have been working with them closely. But it's actually got to the position now where instead of kind of grant funding them to establish Otley Energy, we're paying them to do bits of work that we would like to see happen. So we've grant funded them with small bits of grant funding as of Wicker, West Yorkshire Combined Authority, to help us with things like the regional retrofit hub work, and a smaller piece of work had to do with some sort of LAD funding. So yeah, slightly different perspective there.
Thanks, George. And Ben, did you get to the Energy for All for your schools through a procurement process? Will Walker has asked about social value and procurement. So I just wondered how you did that.
Yeah, so we're at the stages now where that's all going on. We're just in the forming, sort of creating North Links community energy. So we are a bit behind in comparison to some of the other examples given. But yeah, we are following all the sort of procurement processes and ensuring that social value is included in all the procurement that we're doing. And just going back onto the original question with resource, it has been quite tight within us in our area. We have a lot of capital projects that we're delivering, and prioritizing this has been quite a difficult one to lead on. But what I would say is we've had some driven individuals alongside each other in the matrix style approach that we're sort of doing at the council. So it's almost like pick the project up, sprint it, have a matrix team on it, and it's taken us best part of 6-8 months to get to where we are now, but it's not too difficult to get to where you are. It's just giving that resource time and officer commitment in there to drive it forward the best way you can.
Ben. And that kind of picks up on Liz's point about networking internally and externally to give that support to these groups and to get the best out of them. Okay, we're going to run out of time, so let me see what other question we've got. How about, oh yeah, here's one. Has the Department for Education removed those barriers, and are they letting community energy groups install on schools versus public sector decarbonisation programme? Anyone done something? Oh, Ben, you've been doing some schools. Have you found the Department for Education's playing ball?
Again, unfortunately, I'm not being able to answer that. So we're just at that stage now where we're going through the permission and approvals and design stages of the final setup of PV. But I don't know if Mike or Energy for All are on the call, but I think I've seen them on the call. But yeah, they've been driving it forward for us.
Duncan's got his hand up. You'll be able to update us on this, Duncan.
Very briefly, just to say that the Department for Education were threatening to put in a central procurement framework, and not to make it mandatory, but not to tell anybody it wasn't. They've pulled back from that and look likely not to instate it, and have publicly stated that they do not want to prevent any school from installing solar by whatever legitimate means. They still officially require permission from the department for it to go ahead, but they're intending not to block, so go for it.
Good news. Okay, I'm well aware of time, and that I can see all these questions popping up now, so there's a lesson there. We'll speak less and do more questions in the next event. So I'll just quickly summarize, and we will come back. We'll try and do some written answers to the questions. What we've seen is there is some money that comes that is needed to kickstart community energy or support and make the most of your existing groups, but also networking and championing these groups, really important, and using their skills to augment your teams. Critical to work in partnership, so you've got the big industrial decarbonisation stuff going, but like Ben said, that can just happen and the community is just not involved. So this is really important for getting the community involved, active and empowered, and then they will bring in more. Like Tom said, it's an early investment, it'll give you much more later. And it sounds like the Community Energy South work that is coming forward, that Esme outlined, will be a really useful resource to you all, and will hopefully align with some more stuff going into those energy hubs, the energy hubs that we have got supported by BEIS, and we'll keep on badgering the government, and that's what I've got to go and do now, is a call with the Climate Change Committee, because we're visiting local areas, and we're going to Bristol this week, who work very well with their community energy groups and have got the biggest onshore community-owned wind turbine. I might have got that wrong, but anyway, and they did it even though that awful ministerial statement tried to stop us doing any onshore wind. So Duncan, are we winding up, or do you want the last word?
I've just got a few last words. And
can you thank all the speakers?
That's exactly what I was
Good,
going to do.
thanks.
Thank you to all our excellent panel, and to Councillor Slade and to Louise for introducing and chairing. And thanks to Community Energy England staff, London and Community Energy South, who've helped organise and staff the event, and to you, of course, for coming. We hope you were both inspired and informed, and please keep going out there looking for those driven individuals. They will bring you more than it costs you, and the amount that can be mobilised by a bit of seed funding is extraordinary. Community Energy South mentioned masterclasses. They have one on local area energy planning this Thursday at 10 o'clock, so please look on their website. And please do be in contact with your local energy hubs, now called net zero hubs. Our news is that the Rural Community Energy Fund is not going to be extended or expanded, as we've been asking, but that there will be monies for local zero carbon work channeled through the net zero hubs. We will email you all soon and put the links from the chat and any other resources we can muster, and also the link to the event on our YouTube channel, which is full of excellent videos of our previous events, lots of how-to, and we'll attempt to answer any unanswered questions from today. We aim to produce a guide for council and community energy collaborations, and we'll keep you posted. And meanwhile, you may find our how-to pages on our website useful. We encourage you to consider joining Community Energy England, and depending where you are, Community Energy London and Community Energy South. Again, finally, thanks all for attending, and we at Community Energy look forward to working with you all towards a better low carbon future. Thank you. Also, on the slide, there is a link to our new Networks and Learning Officer, Shannon Jackson, who would welcome you contacting her to talk about learning.